The crystalline archives of Kepler Station hummed with ancient energy as Dr. Zara Vel Knox ran her six-fingered hands across the control interface. The Threnody researcher had spent the better part of 3 cycles translating the warning tablets discovered in the ruins of the predecessor civilization. What she found made her primary heart skip several beats. Warning: the third planet species designated human possesses capabilities that exceed all known parameters. Their psychological resilience borders on impossibility. Their capacity for violence when threatened is unmatched in our records. They must never be underestimated or cornered. Should they achieve space travel, immediate diplomatic contact is advised. Under no circumstances should they be viewed as prey or primitive. This species has survived extinction events that would end most civilizations. They are survivors above all else. The translation flickered on her screen as she cross-referenced it with 17 different linguistic matrices. Each one confirmed the same terrifying message. The predecessors, a civilization so advanced they had transcended physical form eons ago, had left specific warnings about humans scattered across the galaxy. Zara's colleague, Dr. Morpheus Chendal of the Aquatic Cetacean Union, emerged from his environmental pod with water still dripping from his biosuit. "Another dead end in the archives?" he asked, his translator converting his sonar clicks into standard galactic speech. "No," Zara whispered, her voice barely audible above the station's ambient noise. "I found something the Galactic Council needs to see immediately." On the other side of the galaxy, High Admiral Vextar of the Saurian Empire was reviewing intelligence reports from the Outer Rim territories. The Saurians had built their reputation on conquest and intimidation. Standing nearly 10 feet tall with razor-sharp claws and armored hide, they had brought dozens of worlds under their control through superior firepower and tactical brilliance. "Another primitive world showing signs of early space travel," reported his aide, Lieutenant Cross. "Designation: Sol 3, species designation: human. They've achieved basic chemical rockets and primitive orbital stations." Vextar's reptilian features curved into what passed for a smile among his kind. "Soft mammals. Perfect for our next expansion. Their industrial base suggests they might provide useful slave labor once properly conditioned." Lieutenant Cross hesitated. "Sir, there are some unusual readings in their historical data. Evidence of extensive warfare, unusual survival rates during planetary disasters, and some concerning technological progression rates." "Concerning?" Vextar's voice carried the rumbling menace that had terrified countless worlds. "Primitive mammals with crude chemical rockets? Ready the 4th Fleet. We'll add another world to our empire within the lunar cycle." Meanwhile, in the shadowy corners of the Nexus Trading Consortium, different plans were taking shape. The consortium operated on pure profit, viewing every discovery as a potential commodity. They had built their wealth by finding primitive civilizations, stripping their resources, and selling their populations to the highest bidders. Trader Prime Zilch adjusted his breathing apparatus as he reviewed potential targets. The methane-breathing businessman had overseen the successful harvest of 47 primitive worlds. Earth represented a particularly attractive opportunity. Abundant water, diverse ecosystems, and a species that hasn't even achieved faster than light travel, he wheezed through his translator. "The biological samples alone will fetch premium prices. The hegemony pays top credits for exotic mammals." His assistant, a insectoid hive mind drone, clicked its mandibles in agreement. "Preliminary scans show they fight among themselves constantly. Perfect for divide and conquer tactics. We can easily pit their various nations against each other while we extract what we need." Back at Kepler Station, Dr. Vel Knox was frantically trying to contact the Galactic Council's emergency frequency, but the ancient communication networks were slow, bureaucratic, and often ignored warnings from academic researchers. Her messages disappeared into the vast diplomatic machinery of an organization that governed thousands of worlds. "Dr." Chendal surfaced again from his calculations. "I've been analyzing the timeline data in these tablets. Zara, if these translations are correct, humans have survived at least 6 potential extinction events: ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, Species that endure that kind of environmental pressure develop adaptations we can't imagine. It gets worse, Zara replied, pulling up additional translations. Listen to this entry. Human pack bonding capabilities exceed known parameters. They form emotional attachments to other species, to inanimate objects, even to abstract concepts. This bonding triggers protective instincts that multiply their combat effectiveness exponentially. They have been observed sacrificing themselves for strangers, fighting impossible odds for symbolic value, and refusing surrender even when logic dictates defeat. The aquatic scientist's sonar organs pulsed with alarm. That's not possible. No species can sustain that level of emotional investment without psychological breakdown. The predecessors seemed to think humans were the exception to most rules. Zara continued reading. They possess an unusual relationship with pain and suffering. Where most species seek to avoid discomfort, humans often deliberately expose themselves to challenging conditions to grow stronger. They call it training. This trait makes them unpredictably dangerous when threatened. 3 sectors away, Captain Sarah Mitchell of the Earth Defense Force was conducting routine patrol of the outer solar system in the UES Defiance, humanity's most advanced spacecraft. The former fighter pilot had volunteered for the lonely assignment after losing her family in the asteroid mining accident on Ceres Station. Space was all she had left. Her communications officer, Lieutenant Zhang, looked up from his console with confusion. "Captain, I'm picking up some strange signals. Long-range scanners show multiple vessels approaching our system. The signatures don't match anything in our databases." Sarah studied the tactical display with growing concern. Her ship was designed for research and asteroid defense, not military engagement. How many vessels? At least 40, possibly more. They're using some kind of stealth technology that's interfering with our sensors. Captain, they're massive. The largest one appears to be over 3 kilometers long. Sarah's training kicked in immediately. She had fought in the resource wars and survived situations that broke other soldiers. The sight of unknown vessels heading toward Earth triggered every protective instinct she possessed. Red alert. Signal Earth Defense Command. Begin emergency protocols. If these are hostile forces, they're going to find out what happens when you threaten humanity's home. Back on the Saurian flagship, Admiral Vextar was reviewing final attack plans. His species had conquered worlds through straightforward intimidation. They would appear in overwhelming numbers, demonstrate their superior firepower, and accept the inevitable surrender of terrified primitives. "Sir," reported his tactical officer, "we're detecting one small vessel in the outer system. Primitive design. Minimal weapons. Should we destroy it as a demonstration?" Vextar considered the options. "No, capture it. We'll use the crew as examples when we broadcast our surrender demands to their homeworld." Nothing breaks a species' spirit faster than seeing their defenders helpless. The Saurian admiral had no way of knowing that the single human vessel he planned to capture contained someone who had never surrendered in her life. Sarah Mitchell had lost everything once and survived. She had no intention of letting it happen again. As the alien fleet approached, Dr. Vel Knox finally managed to get through to a mid-level council bureaucrat. "Please, you must understand the urgency," she pleaded. "The predecessor warnings are specific about this species. They're not primitive mammals. They're something else entirely." The bureaucrat, a slug-like molluscoid administrator, barely looked up from his routine paperwork. "Dr. Vel Knox, the Council receives hundreds of warnings about dangerous primitive species every cycle. Unless you have current evidence of active threat, I cannot justify emergency session protocols. But the tablets specifically mention ancient tablets, Doctor, legends and myths. The Council deals in current realities. If this human species were truly dangerous, surely someone would have encountered evidence by now." The administrator closed the communication link, returning to his forms and schedules, while 3 separate invasion forces converged on a small blue world. None of them had bothered to ask why the most advanced civilization in galactic history had left specific warnings about its inhabitants. Captain Mitchell watched the approaching vessels with grim determination. Her ship's AI calculated odds that weren't encouraging. The UES Defiance carried experimental weapons designed for asteroid mining, not warfare against advanced alien technology. Captain, Lieutenant Zhang reported. I'm receiving communication attempts in multiple languages. The computer is trying to translate. The main screen flickered to life, showing the imposing form of Admiral Vex's tar. The Saurian's massive frame and predatory features were designed to intimidate. When he spoke, his translator rendered the words in harsh, commanding tones. Primitive mammals of Sol 3. I am Admiral Vex Tar, of the Saurian Empire. Your world has been selected for incorporation into our territory. Surrender your vessel immediately, and prepare to transmit our demands to your homeworld. Compliance will result in standard occupation terms. Resistance will result in the elimination of your species. Sarah Mitchell studied the alien commander for a long moment. She had seen bullies before, in the schoolyards of her childhood, in the military academies of her youth, and in the corporate boardrooms of the mining companies. The size and technology might be different, but the fundamental nature was the same. This is Captain Sarah Mitchell of the Earth Defense Force, she replied, her voice steady despite the impossible odds. I have a counter-offer. Turn your ships around and leave our system immediately. Or discover exactly why the predecessors left warnings about humanity. Admiral Vex Tar's roar of laughter echoed through his bridge. One small vessel against my entire fleet? Your species lacks basic tactical understanding. We will capture your ship and use you as an example of human weakness. Sarah's response would have puzzled most galactic species. Instead of fear or desperation, her voice carried something that the Saurian commander couldn't quite identify. It sounded almost like anticipation. Admiral, you're about to learn something that every bully in human history eventually discovered. It's not the size of the fight in the dog. It's the size of the fight in the dog. The human captain cut the transmission and turned to her crew. Ladies and gentlemen, we may be outgunned, but we're not outmatched. These aliens picked the wrong species to threaten. Zhang, signal Earth Command. Tell them to implement the Prometheus Protocol. Chen, charge all weapon systems, including the experimental mining lasers. Rodriguez, plot a course directly toward their flagship. Captain, her navigation officer questioned. That's a suicide run. Sarah Mitchell smiled. And it was the smile of someone who had survived the unsurvivable before. Rodriguez, you're thinking like a rational being. We're humans. We stopped being rational the moment they threatened our home. As the UES Defiance changed course toward the massive Saurian fleet, Captain Mitchell began to understand what the predecessors had tried to warn the galaxy about. Humans didn't just fight to win. They fought to protect what they loved, even when victory seemed impossible. And sometimes, that made all the difference in the universe. The UES Defiance accelerated toward the Saurian fleet at maximum burn, her engines glowing like a miniature star against the darkness of space. Captain Sarah Mitchell had done the math, and the numbers weren't encouraging. But mathematics had never been humanity's strongest weapon anyway. Captain, reported Tactical Officer Chen. Their lead vessels are moving to intercept. Multiple weapon locks detected. They're not taking any chances. Sarah studied the tactical display with the cold calculation of a veteran pilot. They're thinking like conquerors, Chen. Overwhelming force, minimal risk, standard Imperial doctrine. She paused, her fingers dancing across the navigation controls. Time to show them why standard doctrine doesn't work against humans. On the Saurian flagship, Admiral Vex Tar watched the approaching human vessel with growing irritation. One ship. They're sending one small ship against my entire armada. Either they're completely insane, or they have some weapon we haven't detected. His tactical officer, Commander Grok, ran another deep scan of the human vessel. Sir, the ship appears to be a modified research vessel. Minimal armoring, basic weapon systems. I'm detecting some unusual energy signatures from their engine modifications, but nothing that threatens our fleet. Then why would they attack? Vex Tar's predatory instincts were warning him about something, but he couldn't identify the threat. Scan their homeworld. Show me their military capabilities. The main screen shifted to display Earth, and the readings made the Saurian command crew relax visibly. primitive orbital stations, basic chemical rockets, no visible defense networks. Their largest military vessels were smaller than Saurian patrol boats. "Sir," Commander Grack reported with obvious relief, "their entire space-based military consists of perhaps 50 vessels, none larger than light cruisers by our standards. Their homeworld has no orbital defense platforms, no energy shields, no automated weapon systems. This appears to be a desperate final gesture." Admiral Vextar settled back in his command throne. "Capture the vessel. We'll broadcast their crew's helplessness to their homeworld and accept their inevitable surrender." But something bothered him about the human captain's final transmission. There had been something in her voice, something that reminded him of wounded Saurian pack leaders just before they made their final, most dangerous attacks. On Earth, the Prometheus Protocol was activating systems that had been theoretical until this moment. In hidden bunkers across the planet, engineers and scientists worked frantically to implement plans that most people had hoped would never be necessary. Dr. James Harrison, former NASA propulsion specialist turned military consultant, supervised the conversion of humanity's most dangerous experiments into weapons of war. "How long until the orbital platforms come online?" he asked his team. 18 hours for basic functionality," replied Dr. Sarah Kim, the physicist who had originally designed the experimental drives. 72 hours for full deployment. "Sir, these systems were never intended for combat use. We're literally improvising weapons technology in real time." Harrison studied the display, showing Captain Mitchell's approach to the alien fleet. "That woman is buying us time with her life. Make it count." Across the solar system, similar conversations were taking place in research facilities, military bases, and civilian workshops. Humanity's response to existential threat was immediate and comprehensive. Every resource, every brilliant mind, every desperate idea was thrown into the effort to defend their homeworld. The UES Defiance continued its apparently suicidal approach to the Saurian fleet. But Captain Mitchell wasn't planning to die uselessly. She was planning something that no rational military strategist would attempt, which was exactly why it might work. "Rodriguez," she called to her navigator, "I need you to plot a course through their formation. Not around it. Through it. I want to pass within 50 meters of their command vessel." "Captain, that's impossible. Their point defense systems will tear us apart before we get close." Sarah's smile was grim but determined. "Rodriguez, you're still thinking like someone who wants to live through this." "I'm thinking like someone who wants to take as many of them with me as possible." "There's a difference." Lieutenant Zhang looked up from his communications console. "Captain, I'm receiving broadcasts from Earth. The Prometheus Protocol is active. They're asking for tactical data on the enemy fleet." "Tell them we'll get them everything we can," Sarah replied. "Chen, prepare the sensor package for transmission burst. If we're going down, we're going to make sure Earth knows exactly what they're fighting." The first Saurian interceptors opened fire when the Defiance reached maximum range. Energy beams that could vaporize asteroids struck the small human vessel, which should have been destroyed instantly. Instead, something impossible happened. The UES Defiance absorbed the energy, converted it through her modified mining systems, and redirected it back at the attacking vessels. The experimental technology that was supposed to crack asteroids proved remarkably effective at overloading Saurian shields. "Impossible!" roared Admiral Vextar as two of his interceptors exploded. "No primitive species should have energy conversion technology." Commander Grok was frantically running new scans. "Sir, their vessel is using some kind of adaptive shielding system. It's converting our weapons fire into additional power for their engines and weapons." The human ship accelerated again, now moving faster than should have been possible with its original engine specifications. Captain Mitchell's voice came across the communication channels, and this time every ship in the Saurian fleet heard her words. "Admiral Vextar, you wanted to know about human tactical capabilities. Lesson 1. We learn fast. Lesson 2. We adapt faster. Lesson 3. We never quit." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, Dr. Vel Knox was discovering more predecessor warnings that made her academic blood run cold. The latest tablet she had translated contained specific tactical information about human combat behavior. Warning: humans possess unusual neurological responses to extreme stress. When facing certain death, many human individuals enter altered psychological states that dramatically enhance physical and mental performance. They call this berserker rage or combat trance. In this state, they become essentially unstoppable until either victory is achieved or biological systems fail completely. Dr. Chendal emerged from his environmental pod with obvious agitation. I've been researching human mythologies and historical records. Zara, every human culture has stories about individuals who defeated impossible odds through sheer determination. They celebrate these stories. They teach them to their children. That's not mythological behavior, Zara whispered, the implications hitting her like a physical blow. That's psychological conditioning. They're deliberately training their entire species to never surrender. The UES Defiance reached the heart of the Saurian fleet formation, and Captain Mitchell implemented the most insane tactical maneuver in recorded military history. Instead of engaging the massive flagship directly, she targeted the fleet's coordination systems with precisely modulated bursts from her converted mining lasers. The Saurian fleet used quantum entanglement communication networks to coordinate their vessels, a technology that was theoretically impossible to disrupt, but the human mining lasers operated on frequencies that created resonance cascades in quantum-linked systems. Within minutes, the entire Saurian fleet lost fleet-wide coordination. Ships began firing on their own vessels, navigation systems provided contradictory data, and command protocols collapsed into chaos. How did they know? Demanded Admiral Vextar, as his flagship's bridge erupted in alarms. How could a primitive species understand our communication systems well enough to disrupt them? The answer would have terrified him even more than the current situation. Humans didn't understand Saurian communication technology. They had simply applied their mining equipment in ways that violated every safety protocol and discovered the disruption effect through pure trial and error. Captain Mitchell's ship was taking massive damage, but she continued her impossible course through the enemy formation. Her voice reached every ship in the area as she broadcast on all frequencies. This is Captain Sarah Mitchell to any vessel receiving this transmission. I am a human defending my homeworld. We are not a primitive species. We are survivors. We have endured ice ages, asteroid impacts, and countless wars with nothing but determination and ingenuity. You picked the wrong system to invade. As if summoned by her defiance, new contacts appeared on everyone's sensors. From Earth's direction, a swarm of small vessels was approaching at velocities that should have been impossible for chemical rockets. The Prometheus protocol had converted every available spacecraft into a kinetic weapon. Cargo haulers, research vessels, even orbital construction platforms had been loaded with additional fuel and aimed at the invading fleet. They weren't armed with advanced weapons, but they didn't need to be. Newton's laws of physics made every converted vessel into a relativistic projectile capable of destroying targets many times their size. Admiral Vextar watched the approaching swarm with growing horror. How many vessels are they sending? Over 300 contacts, sir. All on collision courses with our fleet. Sir, if those impacts connect, the kinetic energy release will, FOM. I know what it will do. Vextar interrupted grimly. He had underestimated the humans catastrophically. They weren't trying to win a conventional battle. They were trying to destroy both fleets if necessary to protect their homeworld. On the other side of the galaxy, Trader Prime Zilch of the Nexus Trading Consortium was receiving disturbing reports from his advanced scouts. The methane-breathing businessman had sent stealth vessels to observe the Saurian assault and identify profitable opportunities in the aftermath. Sir, wheezed his assistant, the preliminary scans were incorrect. The humans appear to have military capabilities that exceed our projections. Zilch adjusted his breathing apparatus nervously. How much of an increase? 10%? 20? Sir, they just converted their entire civilian fleet into kinetic weapons. They appear to be willing to sacrifice every space-capable vessel they possess, rather than allow conquest of their homeworld. The implications made Zilch's profit calculations collapse into negative territory. That's economically irrational. They're destroying their own infrastructure to prevent capture. Sir, our behavioral analysts believe this is typical human defensive behavior. They fight harder when cornered, not less. Across the galaxy, similar realizations were beginning to dawn on various hostile civilizations who had viewed Earth as an easy target. The humans weren't behaving like any previously encountered species. They were treating the invasion as a fight for species survival. And their response was correspondingly extreme. Captain Mitchell's ship finally succumbed to accumulated damage, but not before transmitting complete tactical data on Saurian fleet capabilities to Earth. Her final message was brief and characteristic. Earth Command, this is Captain Mitchell. I've given you everything we learned. Make them pay for every light year they advance. Remember, we're humans. We don't know how to quit. As the UES Defiance exploded in the heart of the Saurian fleet, Admiral Vextar realized he was facing something unprecedented in his military career. An enemy that preferred mutual destruction to defeat. The approaching swarm of converted human vessels was less than an hour away, moving too fast to intercept and too numerous to destroy. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Vextar began to consider retreat, but it was already too late for simple withdrawal. The humans had tasted alien blood, and they were about to discover just how dangerous a cornered human civilization could become. The swarm of converted human vessels struck the Saurian fleet like the fist of an angry god. Physics became humanity's greatest ally, as masses traveling at relativistic speeds released energy equivalent to nuclear weapons. The magnificent Saurian fleet, built to intimidate and conquer primitive worlds, shattered under an assault of pure kinetic fury. Admiral Vextar watched his flagship's shields collapse under impacts from what had once been a civilian cargo hauler. The irony was bitter. His species prided itself on military superiority, yet they were being destroyed by converted merchant vessels piloted by civilian volunteers. "Emergency retreat," he roared, as another massive impact shook the ship. "All vessels withdraw, to minimum safe distance." But the humans weren't finished. As the battered Saurian fleet pulled back, new threats emerged from the inner solar system. Earth's hastily converted orbital platforms were coming online, and they were nothing like the primitive installations the Saurians had observed. Dr. James Harrison coordinated the defense from Earth's command center, his eyes burning with exhaustion and determination. Platform 7 is ready for primary firing sequence. Platform 12 has achieved target lock. All stations report weapons systems operational. The orbital platforms were actually converted space elevators, mass drivers, and research stations that had been weaponized with typically human ingenuity. The mass drivers now launched projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. The research stations had become electromagnetic pulse generators. Even the space elevators had been turned into kinetic bombardment systems. Admiral Vextar received damage reports that defied military logic. "Sir, the humans are using construction equipment as weapons. They've turned asteroid mining ships into siege artillery. Their agricultural satellites have been converted into electronic warfare platforms." The Saurian admiral was beginning to understand why the predecessors had left warnings. Humans didn't just fight with military equipment, they weaponized everything they touched. Meanwhile, the Nexus Trading Consortium fleet was discovering their own horrific miscalculations. Trader Prime Zilch had ordered his forces to approach Earth from the opposite side of the solar system, planning to capitalize on the chaos caused by the Saurian assault. Instead, they found themselves facing converted asteroid mining platforms that treated their ships like particularly large rocks in need of processing. "Sir," wheezed his tactical coordinator, "they've weaponized their entire mining infrastructure. Those industrial lasers are cutting through our hulls like they were designed for ship-to-ship combat." Zilch's profit calculations had moved into nightmare territory. How are they coordinating defensive systems across the entire solar system? They don't have faster-than-light communications. The answer would have impressed the consortium's own engineers. Humans had created a network of communication relays using quantum entanglement technology, reverse-engineered from their first studies of the alien invaders. They had learned from Captain Mitchell's initial engagement and adapted the technology within hours. On Jupiter's moon Europa, Dr. Elena Vasquez was supervising the activation of humanity's most desperate gambit. The research station orbiting the ice moon had been working on experimental faster-than-light communication when the invasion began. Now they were attempting something that violated every known law of physics. Dr. Vasquez called her assistant, Dr. Park. The quantum cascade is approaching critical resonance. If this works, we'll be able to contact every human vessel in the solar system instantaneously. And if it doesn't work, Elena asked grimly, we'll create a quantum explosion that destroys everything within several light years. Elena considered the options. The aliens had come to humanity's system expecting easy conquest. They were about to discover that humans would rather destroy everything than submit to slavery. Initialize the cascade, she ordered. If we're going down, we're taking them with us. The experimental communication array activated, and something unprecedented happened. The quantum field didn't just connect human vessels, it interfaced with the neural patterns of every human in the solar system. Suddenly, every human defender could feel the determination of every other human defender. The collective will of an entire species focused into a singular purpose: protect Earth at any cost. Admiral Vex Tar's sensors detected the quantum cascade, but his tactical officers couldn't explain what they were observing. Sir, there's some kind of field effect emanating from the fourth planet's moon. It's connecting all human vessels in a network we don't understand. Jamming? Vextar hoped desperately. No, sir. Enhancement. Their coordination efficiency just increased by several thousand%. The Saurian admiral was beginning to realize he hadn't invaded a primitive world. He had attacked a species that became more dangerous when threatened. Back on Kepler Station, Dr. Velnox had finally managed to contact someone with actual authority in the Galactic Council. High Counselor Threnox, of the Altarian Federation, was reviewing her translations with growing alarm. Dr. Velnox. The crystalline being's thoughts resonated through the translation matrix. Are you certain these warnings are authentic predecessor artifacts? Artifacts. Absolutely certain, High Counselor. And there's more. I've found references to something called the human cascade effect. According to these tablets, when humans achieve quantum neural linking, they become a collective organism that retains individual creativity while sharing collective determination. The implications made the High Counselor's crystal matrix dim with fear. A species that can function as both individuals and a collective consciousness? That's theoretically impossible. The predecessors seemed to think humans were impossible in general, Zara replied. They left over 100 warnings about various human capabilities that violate standard biological and psychological models. As if to confirm her words, reports began flooding into the Galactic Council from across the galaxy. The human defense of Earth was being observed by dozens of civilizations, and the tactical data was unprecedented. The humans had achieved space-based coordination that matched civilizations thousands of years more advanced. They were improvising weapons technology in real time that equaled military equipment developed over centuries. Most disturbing of all, they were displaying collective behavior that combined individual initiative with species-wide unity. Admiral Vextar made the hardest decision of his military career. Signal the fleet. General retreat. We're withdrawing from the Sol system. Sir, protested Commander Grok, we still outnumber them significantly. Our individual vessels have superior firepower. Commander, Vextar interrupted grimly. Superior firepower means nothing against an enemy willing to ram converted civilian vessels into your flagship. These humans fight like every battle is their species' final stand. The Saurian fleet began its withdrawal, but the humans weren't content to simply drive them away. The quantum-linked human defenders pursued the retreating aliens with converted vessels, improvised weapons, and absolute determination to ensure the invaders never returned. Trader Prime Zilch reached the same conclusion as Admiral Vex Tar, but for different reasons. Profit margins are impossible when the target species destroys their own infrastructure rather than allow capture. Mark Sol 3 as economically non-viable. Permanent exclusion from consortium operations. His assistant wheezed agreement. Sir, should we warn other trading companies? Definitely. Any species that weaponizes their entire civilization when threatened is too dangerous for commercial exploitation. The third invasion force, a slaver fleet from the hegemony, received the withdrawal orders from their advanced scouts before they even reached the outer solar system. The reports from the battle made their decision easy. Species classification. Apex predator. Recommendation: avoid all contact. Humans treat slavery attempts as existential threats. Military response exceeds all projections. Within hours of the first alien ship entering Earth's solar system, word was spreading across the galaxy through official channels, criminal networks, and trading consortiums. Earth was not a primitive target. Humans were not suitable prey. Dr. Elena Vasquez monitored the quantum communication network as alien fleets fled the solar system in all directions. The neural link was allowing her to feel the emotions of millions of humans across space: relief, pride, determination, and something else that surprised her: curiosity. Now that they had proven they could defend themselves, humans wanted to know who had attacked them and why. They wanted to explore the galaxy, meet other species, and understand their place in the cosmic community. The quantum cascade had done more than link human minds during the crisis. It had awakened humanity to the reality that they were not alone in the universe, and that realization was generating the same intense focus that had driven their defense. High Counselor Threnox contacted Earth directly, using diplomatic protocols that had been developed for first contact with new civilizations. His message was transmitted to every major government on the planet. People of Earth, I am High Counselor Threnox of the Galactic Council. We have observed your recent defense against unauthorized invasion attempts. We offer formal diplomatic contact and membership in the galactic community. The human response came from Dr. Harrison, speaking for a hastily assembled coalition of Earth's governments. High Counselor, we appreciate the offer, but we have some questions first. Why didn't anyone warn us about these invasion fleets? And how many other civilizations knew we existed but chose to remain silent while we were attacked? The directness of the question made the High Counselor realize that humanity's entry into galactic politics would be as disruptive as their military capabilities. Dr. Velnox's translations provided the answer to humanity's questions. The predecessors had left specific warnings about human capabilities, but also about human psychology. The final tablet she discovered contained the most important warning of all. When humans discover they have been deliberately excluded from galactic civilization, their response will reshape the political structure of known space. They do not forgive betrayal, and they do not forget injustice. Any civilization that knew of their existence but failed to offer assistance during their early space development will be held accountable. As Dr. Velnox transmitted these final translations to the Galactic Council, she realized the invasion of Earth hadn't ended a potential threat. It had awakened one. Across the galaxy, civilizations that had known about Earth but chosen to ignore it began receiving diplomatic inquiries from humanity. The questions were polite but pointed, and they demonstrated that humans had somehow acquired detailed information about galactic politics, trade routes, and military capabilities. The quantum cascade had done more than link human minds. It had interfaced with alien technology during the battle, downloading vast amounts of information about galactic civilization. Humanity was no longer an isolated species on a single world. They were a quantum-linked collective consciousness with space travel capabilities, advanced weaponization skills, and detailed knowledge of every civilization that had known about them but chosen to remain silent. Admiral Vextar, safely back in Saurian space, received a personal message that made his blood run cold. It was from Dr. Harrison, speaking for Earth's new diplomatic corps. Admiral, humanity doesn't hold grudges against honorable enemies. You invaded us openly and fought according to military protocols. We can respect that, even as we defend against it. But we've discovered that dozens of civilizations knew about Earth and chose to watch while we were attacked. Those civilizations will be hearing from us soon. Consider this your warning. The galaxy just changed, and humanity remembers who their real enemies are. The predecessors had tried to warn the galaxy about humanity's capabilities, but their most important warning had been forgotten in the rush to exploit what seemed like a primitive world. Humans are the universe's survivors. They do not simply endure threats, they grow stronger from them. Any civilization that awakens humanity's defensive instincts will discover they have not conquered a new territory. They have created a new enemy that will never stop adapting, never stop improving, and never stop fighting for what they believe is right. The invasion of Earth was over. The human expansion into galactic civilization was just beginning, and it would be unlike anything the universe had seen before.